and Anna, we've been spending a lot of time together over the past year or so. And the way that you guys have consistently said yes to God, even when it doesn't make sense, when you've taken your faith and made it a really active faith, where you're not just believing it, but you're acting on things, has been inspiring to us, has been challenging to us. We've loved watching you go make crazy, scary leaps and yeses, and it's been a pretty wild ride over the last year, I would say. And you're nodding your heads. Agree? So I want to talk about everything that you're doing now, all the projects that you have on the table and what your visions are for the future. But before we get to all of that, can you just fill us in, bring us into your life a year and a half ago, 2 years ago? Like, what was kind of the normal baseline? What did life look like for you?
Yeah, I was working construction. So I have my own construction company, and Anna was mostly stay-at-home mom, but we had like a day or two of childcare. So that was the gist of our life. I would go to work mostly every day, doing remodels, building houses, whatever. And she would, on the day she didn't have kids, would be doing pottery, mostly as a hobby. But I think we were starting to build it into a business, not knowing exactly where we were going with it. But
kind of like some people want to have that feeling of like, all right, I like this as a hobby. Maybe I could start doing more of it, sell it, make a little money, more money doing it, give some more time and energy to it. I think a lot of people are familiar, if not doing that, at least having those thoughts.
Right.
When did you start to feel like things were going to change? When did you feel like that life wasn't really going to be the way that you were going to go anymore? When did that happen, and how did that feel?
I just remember we had a conversation around our fire pit on a date night while we were hiding outside from our kids. And we're just like, we knew that Anna needed to take a step in her business, but we didn't know how that was going to work. And then that was the next day where God was just provided money for childcare, and then childcare from somebody. Like those two things was like, okay, that was weird. Yeah. We had this conversation last night. I was going to work less so she could, but then all of a sudden we got childcare and somebody paid for it. So that is kind of where it started. And then it was probably the year and a half ago where I think I had called her because something went wrong on a job. And I'm like, things just aren't going right. We really need to start praying about this direction God is leading us with your business and my business. What is he trying to do? That was definitely a turning point for my construction company and our life, in like that next step that we had to take. We were praying for God to close doors on certain things with Kaya Homes, which was our construction company. And there was a couple big jobs, actually maybe 2 or 3, like massive really jobs. Bigger than I ever had, that if we had got it, it would have like consumed. It would have been great financially and all these things, like amazing profit and all this stuff. But I was like, God, this is not the direction, just close it. So I should have gotten definitely 2 of those jobs because I'm bidding lower than everybody else. The architect I was working with said I should have got it because of my overhead. I had no overhead. It was just me. And then I would have some subcontractors. So I was bidding against these really large companies, and God shut the door. Just one day, they're like, hey, they decided to go with this company. And I'm just like, didn't you say they were way more money? And like, I didn't ask more questions. Just like, okay, that's a closed door.
But you also did have relief because there was that buildup of like a little bit of anxiety. Like,
it was a big job. So
yeah.
Praying for closed doors is not a prayer that we talk about very often. Like, God, please close doors. And can you say again, like, why did you pray, God, close these doors, even though I see like financial benefit to it? Like, what was it about it, or where you wanted to go, that you were praying for closed doors?
I think For me, I just have always desired to hear God's voice and hear it clearly, but I don't always get it. And that's a way for God to be like, this is the direction, and gives us confirmation. So like God closed this door that I should be able to walk through no problem, but just close it if it's not the right way. And that happened with like 2 or 3 jobs. I don't want to be that guy that's like, God said, and I know it. I'm just not. I wish I was that confident in hearing God's voice. I wish like I was like Smith's Wigglesworth, and he could just like do these crazy things. He's like, because God told me to. And I'm just like, I'm not there. Right. So for us, that's what it was. Close these doors so we know which direction to go.
Yeah. That's awesome. And he was also testing our faith at that point, I think, too, is he's like, okay, all right, you're willing to do this. And if you're going to pray into this, I'm going to show you. And that was honestly, that was the start of it. That was the start of us being like, okay, wait a minute. He answered this prayer. Not that the childcare wasn't, but God moves in your life and he works things out. And you're like, oh, that's so amazing. God pulled through for me. But sometimes you need constant reminders. So he was just at the starting point of building our faith for this next huge season that we had no idea was happening.
Well, let's get into that, this next huge season. So what else has God added to your plate, or what else has he granted favor in that maybe has surprised you since then?
We went to Africa on a missions trip in 2023 in February, and we knew that we were supposed to go on this trip together. We got to Africa and we're like, this is amazing. We're on our first missions trip together. And something was different. Once we met Imelda, she is a woman who is closely associated with the Center of Hope Orphanage. And we were having a conversation, and I was just like, what do you do? Do you work? Do you help out with the orphanage? What do you do? And she said, well, what I've always wanted to do is be a fashion designer. And another thing that I've always wanted to do is become a potter. And this was like within the first day, first or second day. And my jaw just dropped. So we went to the orphanage, and we knew at that time the orphanage, the Center of Hope Orphanage, had no directors stateside. So it was kind of floating. There was not really much money coming in. There had been kind of threats that it would close down, but we did not know how much God would press our hearts there. We prayed on it a lot while we were there. And then also we got on the plane to leave Africa, and there was this sense of like, we're leaving home, which was bizarre. And so what was the date? Maybe April. We went to Africa in February. By April, I think God had spoken like, you are going to be the new directors of Center of Hope. And at that point, it was put under the umbrella of our church, Restoration Church.
When you say that's when God said you're going to be the directors, how did you know that? Did he like get on the phone with you and be like, hey, Anna and Chris, this is God. I'm going to have you be the directors of Center of Hope. Like, how were you so confident that that was God's next step for you?
Because I think a lot of people are like really echo with Chris saying like, I don't always hear from God. Right. Like, I'm not the person who's like, God told me this and I will do it. Like, and you read in the Bible of like, God told Moses and Moses did this, and like, oh, I don't know what that's like. Can you try to put some words to like, how did you know that God wanted you to be the directors of this international nonprofit and completely out of the realm of your experience and desires before this?
It wouldn't leave our minds. We were thinking about the kids every day. We were thinking about the possibilities, and God was starting to download like vision for what he wanted for Center of Hope to both of us. And when we would have conversations, it would like bring us so much joy to talk about it. And that's how we knew. I mean, it wasn't like, honestly, it was actually pretty straightforward, not like the audible voice of God. It was more of a couldn't shake it feeling.
But we had a conversation with our pastor, who I used to work for. I was on staff at the church. I worked for him for 10 years. So it wasn't anything out of the ordinary for us to call and talk to him about this, but we just asked if we could talk with him and about us being this directors of the Center of Hope. And we called him, told him about it. And then he goes, honestly, this is what I was hoping you were calling about. Mm-hmm. So he was already praying about it. He was already feeling that was the right direction. And then it was just so for us, that was, okay, we heard God, let's keep moving forward. I would say, some days you question your decisions. You're like, shoot, was that God? And then because the enemy wants to just squash what you're doing. So it's never just God said, and we're just going to keep moving forward. Mm-hmm. Like there's days that I'm like, I don't know what we're doing. And then there's other days I'm like, let's go, let's do this. And so
ever since then, of course, now like God's been giving you a bunch of money and you're totally clear and totally confident all the time and everything's easy since then, right? Since like saying yes to God and doing this. So that's worked out real great.
It's so fluffy and glittery and perfect and amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So easy.
Maybe not.
No.
What have been some of the scary things that have not made sense, that have been scary steps? Talk to some of the time that God has brought you, like Anna, like you used to say, to the 11th hour, right?
Right.
To the very end when it's like, okay, we need something like now or we're screwed. Like, what does it look like in some of those moments since taking on this? Yes.
This year has been a lot of 11th hour stuff. Like you said, one of the scariest things has been watching the end of the month happen and we can't pay our mortgage. And I don't know if this is a scary thing, but this was a humbling thing for me for the first time ever needing food stamps for our family, for the first time ever qualifying. I think that's what it was, is qualifying for fuel assistance and all those things. And instead of looking at it, what I was doing is, all right, God, if we're saying yes to you, why aren't you providing in these areas? And then he was like, I am providing in these areas via the state. That's how I'm providing. And so there was a lot of humility and a lot of being brought low to be able to then really, really be able to hold on to the yes. Like, okay, all right, God, so you are. And there were a few times, you hear those stories of, I opened my mailbox and there was a $5,000 check, stuff like that. But for real, like the 11th hour, our neighbor was like, here's $1,000, use it how you want, how you need, and that would help tack off. Or we would get like 3 orders that equaled our mortgage payment, just really cool stuff that he did in like very unique ways. It wasn't always, here's a check. God knows that I love healthy produce. And what's amazing is the farm in our area, if you have food stamps, you get half off on their produce. And so that was an amazing thing. But also school supplies showed up at our door for each kid randomly. And it was a backpack full of everything they needed. They all needed new backpacks. So it was just pretty incredible. Before the scare, so it was like, you got scared, you got nervous, and then God was like, here you go. And then you're able to, I've cried more, I think, in this season than I've ever cried, because you just feel God, you feel the love of God and how he cares for you. It doesn't mean it's been easy though. It doesn't.
Not that we're ever like not spending enough time with God, but there's always more time you can spend with God. We just fill it with a lot of other things. So I've had to really, really stop and get, lack of better words, get to know Jesus, right? And get to know how he functions in our life and how the Holy Spirit functions in our life, and how he comforts us or speaks to us or guides us or gives us peace in situations that we don't understand. Mm-hmm. Because the scariest, hardest thing for me has been that I don't feel like I'm providing. Mm-hmm. So I have to literally stop and just sit down and put on worship music because I don't know what else to do. For me, I've definitely taken way more time to pray and just have felt like these decisions you can't do without a lot of prayer, without a lot of slowing down and listening. So if we're going to take these steps of faith that make no sense, I've got to be closer to Jesus. I've got to understand his will for our lives and what is our purpose on this planet. Like, we only live here for so long, and then we live in eternity. So why are we here? That's where I've just like trying to keep myself.
Yeah. I think for me, it's just always at this point, I'm like, everything on this earth doesn't matter. The mission that God has given us matters, like the assignment he's giving us, and he's willing to partner with us on that. And Kelsey and Mike, you guys always say God doesn't get overwhelmed. Like, I don't know why you should be overwhelmed. He's not overwhelmed. And it's like, but I'm a human. But really that spoke to me in a big way, is like, God's not overwhelmed. I mean, he's asked us to partner with him, and he's refining us to get to that point. And so there's been constant refining. And I'm talking like, I heard someone talk about like when you stir silver and the dross comes to the top, and then you got to scrape it off. Then you got to continue stirring, and all the impurities keep coming to the top, and you got to scrape it off. And that's what I feel like we're in the process. Like, we're able to hear God more because we just keep, all right, what else is in there? Like, search my heart, God, which is actually a really scary question.
That's a bold prayer.
What is in there that needs to come out? And really, like, what is coming out is just like not pretty. And, for me personally, it's not pretty. And he's like, you need to pull it together. And the way he speaks to Chris is different than he speaks to me. For me, it's like, pull it together. We've already talked about this. That's kind of his voice in my own head. But, whenever, like Chris said, I could be throwing a pot and God is like, you need to go pray. Like, you just need to go pray. So hands covered in clay. Now, I mean, I didn't used to stop. Like, we, again, in the Grove had these conversations of like, hey, maybe you just need to, like, when you feel the prompting, just like stop and go pray. Really, it has made such an insane difference, because God isn't just in your mind in the morning when you have your morning time devotion. He's not just in your mind when you decide to go to bed and read your Bible at night. It's all day. Mm-hmm. So if he's trying to speak something and we need to write it down, it's got to be then. I mean, those have been the most powerful times, honestly, not the times that I planned, the times that he has prompted that time. So
it's not even just talking about these huge yeses, where the yes to leave the construction business, the yes to start the pottery business full time, the yes to become the directors of the Center of Hope. Those are some huge life-changing yeses. But really, the life-changing stuff is in those moment-by-moment yeses of like, okay,
stop
Lord,
and pray.
He says, stop and pray. He said, say, okay, hands off the pottery. That pot's going to flop. I'm going to have to come back to that clay later. But right now, we're just going to get on our knees and write and journal and pray and study and responding to him as if he's telling the truth. Like, I want to spend time with you right now. Will you spend time with me, even though it's throwing off your plan, even though it's not the time you scheduled with me, even though it's going to put you maybe behind schedule with this project? Are you going to trust that I'm taking care of you? And right now, the best thing to do is to just spend time with him. That's remarkable. Why haven't you walked away yet? Like, why haven't you gone back to what you know? Why haven't you restarted the construction business? Why haven't you gone and looked for another job that would bring in some more reliable income? Like, why haven't you walked away from these yeses yet and gone back to the way things were when it was a little bit easier, when it was a little bit more predictable? Why haven't you quit?
Oh, man. The verse always that is running through my head is, God will supply everything we need according to his riches and glory. That to me is like kingdom mentality, eternal work. So is what we're doing now, like if we're saying yes to God, that's eternal work, regardless of our financial state, because money's nothing to God. Money's just, he's the God of all resources, and money's nothing. we think it is. We need money for things. But if we're saying yes to the God of the universe, the God that created the heavens and the earth and owns 1,000 of everything, more than that, he owns a thing. He owns all the things. Why? all the things. Why would I be worried that he's not going to provide for us? And
the thing that keeps me going is fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom. Mm-hmm. So not fear as in I'm afraid of God because he's going to strike me down dead, which he can, but fear as in reverence and like that he is all knowing, and that the beginning of all wisdom is put your trust in him and to have faith. Because if you have shaky faith, you don't really have faith. You just, if you say you believe it, but don't do anything, you're not really trusting that he is leading you. So you're like, I think he's saying this, but I'm not going to do it because I don't know. So we just take those steps. But if I'm on a journey, if I'm going somewhere and I'm almost there, I would hate to stop. Right. Like we're almost to Florida, but we're going back home. Too bad. Disney World's right there. Too bad. Like this trip was terrible, 24-hour car ride, but we're just going to go back. Like, I think that's where we're at now is like, we just have to keep going. If we stop now, like we're going to miss the mountaintop. We're going to miss what God is trying to do. And not that we're going to reach this spot in our life where it's like, we've made it. It's just going to be ups and downs. God's going to lead us in all different seasons and whatever, and all the things we do. But at this point, like, why stop?
Yeah.
I've got a question about how you would respond to two types of people. One person who says, that all sounds crazy, following Jesus, like giving up everything that you're doing, and everything that you've had. And another person who is like, you know what? That doesn't seem so crazy. I feel like God might be kind of, I don't know, he's put something on my mind, kind of put something on my heart. I can't shake it. And I get you, but it's scary. Could you speak to those two people? And it's a two-part question, but I think you can handle it.
It's been interesting because I've answered that question multiple times within our journey, like in different ways. And God's kind of given me a little bit more wisdom and how to answer. Because before I'm like, stop judging us, like when we first, because I was like kind of unsure, like, yeah, we just did a whole thing that's kind of seems stupid. You have 4 kids, because it's like you have 4 kids and you start to feel attacked in the sense of like, we're not caring for our children. We're making stupid
You're being
moves.
irresponsible by not putting their needs first. And
And so a lot of that is condemnation from the enemy. It wasn't always coming out of people's mouths. So sometimes they would make comments, but it was my own stuff. It was also my own pride that I had to work through, like the stirring of the silver. And that was crap that had to go. And now I just, basically the way that I answer when somebody's like, why? I just say, at this point, we've said some really scary yeses. And if God is asking us to do this next step, we have to. Like, there's no other option, because we've seen the goodness and the faithfulness of God. And I do always bring up the do not store treasures on earth. Like, what we think our life has to look like, especially in the Western world, is cozy and comfy and fluffy. I love the cozy, comfy, fluffy. I'd love to homestead vegetables and, all the things, have my little greenhouse, set up camp. Right.
I mean, my most cozy mug is made by you. So like, you like cozy things, but.
Right. But really, like, that's been, I think, the thing I've had to share the most is like, we are living here once, like we're on this earth once, and what are we going to do with it? So, we just decide to say yes to God. And it's still a scary answer for people because it's so uncertain. So you're selling your house. What's next? We actually don't know. Like, we don't know what God's doing. So I guess to the people that are like, wow, you're crazy, there's no stability. Really, where are your treasures being stored? Like, are there idols maybe that you need to look through? For if I'm talking to a Christian, of course,
Sure.
If I'm talking to a non-Christian, the answer is going to be different, but somebody who's following Jesus.
Recognizing that your security is not in the career and the money. It's like God has brought you to the point where it's very clear, like security is with God. And so like the yes may be scary, but the no at this point is even scarier. Like to think of saying no is right. Like, well, certainly can't do that. Like he's been too good. He's been too, leading us forward that yes is the least scary thing we could do.
Right. But if you haven't taken that step, it seems foolish and unstable.
Well, scripture says God uses the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God uses those people who are willing to take seemingly foolish steps in order to, and you're not living your life so that you will shame people. That's not what that verse means. And it's not what I mean by bringing it up, but just he uses those things because then he gets all the glory for it. You can't look at wherever your life goes from here and be like, yeah, it's this way. We've had this kind of impact and we have this kind of joy and we have this kind of peace because we're awesome. And we had a great business plan and it all worked according to plan. You have to just give God the credit and it draws other people to him by seeing your example.
So about those other people now who have heard this whole way here and it's like, okay, I actually feel like I'm kind of maybe a few steps behind you, but it's scary. I get it. I want to do this. I want to follow God. What's the next step? Like how can you encourage them?
Yeah. These are like my favorite conversations to have with people.
He's good.
So people love to just talk about random things, but if I can get somebody to be like, I think I'm supposed to do this. And be like, oh, how can we make it happen?
Like, wait a minute.
Can I help
you?
That
lights you up.
Yeah. I'm just like, let's start something because starting things can be really hard. Like it's not the best thing. Taking that first step. I just keep thinking about this. My neighbor, one of our neighbors, he lives down the road. He's this older guy that super nice, has 2 dogs and he
comes over on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, whatever. So we just sort of become friends with him. I don't think he's a Christian or anything, but we just told him the other day because he's walking on the road, like, yeah, we're going to be selling our house. He's like, what's next? We're not sure. He's like, oh, no problem. You just took the first step. So now you got to figure out the next one.
Yeah,
and it's like,
that was so simple.
I'm like, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Like take your time and move in these steps. So if you're like, I feel like I'm supposed to do this, then push on a door and start taking those steps. Like us, we're like, all right, I'm going to work maybe a day or 2 less so you can start pottery and I'll watch the kids. And then the next day, childcare. And we're like, whoa, that was weird. Like we just took that first step. Mm-hmm. So those people that are like questioning what to do, like you're never going to know unless you take a step. Like you have to take a step. Like God's not going to do it for you because he's a loving God that lets us do and make our own choices. Like he allows us to do those things. I think would be really important for someone like that is to get around people that are making decisions like that. Because we have plenty of people in our life that are making decisions like this that aren't always encouraging. So like they're not meaning to be discouraging. They're really just looking out for us. Like from a high vantage point, you're like, well, they just are like, they don't want us to get hurt or lose our house or do this, blah, 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 blah. But to get around the people that are like you guys, where you're like, that's amazing. Let's do it. How can we help? And like you guys have been a huge support in that. So be around people that are making those decisions. Don't just sit there, take a step. If it's the wrong one, God will lead you down the right path. Like we make our plans, but God's going to direct our steps, which is another thing that we hold on to. Like we have a plan, but ultimately we let God direct our steps because he sees the roadblocks and the things we don't see, things that will trip us up, things that will make our minds think it's all about us or whatever, fill in the blank. So
how you had mentioned getting around other people who are kind of doing the same kind of things you are, trying to say the same kind of yeses, live the same kind of life of faith that you are. Can you kind of speak to the impact of surrounding yourself with people, and even how the Grove has played into that as you've been walking alongside your small group, and the Grove on the whole, and how has that impacted your journey through these crazy yeses?
Yeah. So speaking to getting around people that can encourage you, like the Grove is where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
If all we had was Mike and Kelsey, we could keep going.
Yeah.
But the Grove has been instrumental for us for sure,
mm-hmm.
because although everyone in that group is doing something completely different, we're all trying to say yes to God and do those things that most of us just think about, but not everyone puts into action. And the enemy is great at putting people in your life to stop you, and does not want people like you guys in other people's lives to encourage them. Because if we all encourage each other, then we'll actually do something. Like, just imagine if every Christian started saying yes to everything God was asking them to do. I think that's so vital. And I know for us, just being able to be in that call every single week has been I don't know how to put it into words. It's just like,
there's
it gives you the
every
strength
time.
Because every
Yes.
week is hard, right? Normal
And
life is hard. Like raising kids is hard, doing these things, and just being able to be like, this is what happened, I need prayer, or hey, celebrate this with us. And like people celebrating with you, you're like, oh, people care.
Yeah.
Like, because
we can keep going.
Yeah. People
we can
care.
do this.
So for me, it's been great.
And I love that it's grounded in prayer too. You know, you're praying with each person, and God is kind of guiding the conversation. Like the Holy Spirit is guiding the conversation through you guys. And that's what I love. Is they're nuggets, but they're like God sauce nuggets. Oh, that's a good
nuggets.
Nuggets with some God sauce. and it's
now I'm hungry.
Really, really cool. And I've also learned from other people's experiences. Like somebody's writing a book, somebody has a giant organization that helps to support other organizations doing God things. And like their yeses are also scary. And it's been really cool to see that in the moments where we're like, we can't do this anymore. Like, this is too much, too much. We're arguing about things, or there's like not unity, or God's having to work out stuff in us. But then we jump on the call and we hear that everyone else is also kind of struggling. Like they're going through life, they're going through things. And then you don't feel like it's just so hard for you and easy for them.
You don't feel alone.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's been really cool. Like it takes you out of, not that we're isolated, but it takes you out of that isolation feeling, being a part of the Grove. It's been awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And honestly, you guys are our piece of together, where it's like, are we crazy? Is this whole Grove idea dumb? Like, should this shut down? And then we show up weekly and get to hang out with you and hear what God's doing, and we're like, oh no, God's doing stuff. This is good. God's moving and God's doing stuff, and this should keep going. So the feeling is mutual for sure. So
awesome.
Thanks for that, guys. Appreciate it.
Everyone has a specific plan and purpose, has a specific assignment. Our assignment and your assignment are different. They have similarities, but they're different. And just like the people watching this, like maybe God is calling you to start up. Like you have this amazing gift of making money, right? Like he's using that, and you can become like a patron of somebody who is doing the other scary thing of like going out to the nations, or doing that extra scary step, whatever God is asking them to do. But he's not going to call you to do exactly what we're doing. So I think my encouragement is, if you feel the prompting, like Chris said, take that step. whatever the step is, and it doesn't have to be a big step. Like maybe the step is you're in the middle of doing work and God has asked you to walk away and go pray. Like that, it's a relationship. It's not just this religious act that we do, reading the Bible and praying. It is a full-blown relationship. And that's how you learn to hear God's voice better. We never have it. I get it wrong all the time. He's gotten it wrong. And that's where the humility comes in. But you, like, God's there. Like, he's like, just seek me and I'm here. I'm ready to have this conversation with you. And sometimes we think we need that very audible voice, but sometimes he needs you to just rest and be with him.
A very important thing for people to get from this conversation is not, well, now I've got to figure out some really big, crazy things to do.
Yeah.
Mm.
So this wasn't like, we didn't just come up with this like in a month. We're like, let's do all these things and then tell people God's speaking to us.
There was healing.
Yeah. I stepped down from being a pastor at our church in 2020. And it's been identity crisis whirlwind all over the map. But to speak again to Anna's point of like, it doesn't need to become directors of Center of Hope or shut down your business. It could be, hey, I want you to use your business for this, not this, like whatever. But the first time that I remember hearing God, besides like giving my life to him when I was a kid, was I was 14 years old. And when I share this story, most people are like, oh, that's cute. That's cute, Chris. But I loved rollerblading. I thought I was going pro.
Inline skating.
Yeah, like at the skate park, like I was so cool. I loved that. And I was saving up money to buy a new set of rollerblades that I wanted because I was going professional. Like I was going to be on the X Games, like not a joke. I would do it every day. I was trying to build my own ramps, all this stuff. And I was at a youth group, not even at our church. And I didn't play music or anything, not even remotely. Like, I think every kid wants to play an instrument, but I felt like God was like, I don't want you to buy those skates. I want you to buy a guitar. And like, that was like the first time I was like, the heck was that? I don't remember who I talked to, probably with a youth pastor or something. I was like, I think I'm supposed to do this. Probably our pastor who I've been under for years and years and years. But I bought the guitar, and a few months later, somehow I was leading worship at our youth group and I still couldn't play guitar. But like God used that to break all of this fear inside of me because I was so afraid of people. I had to get up in front of people and do something I didn't know how to do and lead in a way I didn't know how to lead. And it broke so much fear. And from that point, one thing I've always said for a long time is like, do things that you're afraid of so you can grow. So for me, I was just afraid of people. Like I won most shy in 8th grade, and I had God used that and many other things to pull me out of my shell so that he could use me in this season. So that very first thing was, don't buy skates, buy a guitar. Was it God? He used it. Like it was used in many different ways. But maybe it's just something so simple like that. Like, don't buy that, buy this. Why, God? Because I'm going to use it. How? I can't tell you because you won't believe me. Like
Right.
So
imagine if he gave you the full picture when you were 14, like that, you'd be like, all done with that.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. Yeah.
So
that's awesome. You guys are just the most delightful delight, and I adore you so much. And I'm really grateful for you guys spending some time chatting with us today. Thank you so much. You are, you're just constant willingness to say the next yes is making such an impact for the kingdom. And I am really grateful that we get to have a front row seat to that, and we get to walk alongside you every week. But it is just such a privilege to see how your scary yeses turn into scarier yeses, turn into scarier yeses, but all the while we're just seeing the kingdom of God grow and be brought here on earth as it is in heaven. And I'm grateful for that and for your faithfulness to it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.